Dr. Donna Kinchlow. We're jumping into session 2 of Excellent Questions, which are questions that new nursing students provided for grief and loss and spirituality. They gave me 64. This is the second set of 10 questions. They're wonderful. What are some things you should say to a person facing death who's not religious and scared of dying? First, we have to realize that nurses don't always know what to say. As a matter of fact, people don't know what to say a lot of the time. But when a person faces death, we actually have a sweet opportunity. We can help relieve fear. We can provide comfort. We can listen. We can validate their life. And we can share with them. So when you're asking about fear, think about it. If I was afraid and I was dying, it would be very appropriate for you to go, Donna, what are you most afraid of? And then you would listen. And when people open up and share, you might find out that I'm afraid I'm going to have pain at the end, or that I don't want to lay and suffer, or there may be fears that I have. And I'm going to tell you, I had a friend who was a nurse, and she was my neighbor, and she came to me and told me, Donna, here are the things I am afraid of when I die. I don't want to not be able to breathe. I don't want to have respiratory problem and be short of breath. That's something that's really bothersome to me. And she just shared every scenario, because she's been a nurse for years, that she didn't want to have happen to her. And I listened. Now, what did Lois say to me that meant more to me than you'll ever know? She said, Donna, you're the only one that lets me talk about dying. Everybody else says, oh, I am praying to God and you're going to be well. Oh, God is going to heal you. But you were the only one who lets me talk about dying. So you see, we are a privileged people. Are they afraid of pain and suffering before they die? Well, what can you do about that? You can assure them that you're going to take care of their pain management. And then, baby, I expect you to do it. I had a man who came to the med-surg unit, and God love his soul. I first met him doing my assessment, and he says to me, Donna, I'm not used to having pain, and I'm having pain. And now that I know I have cancer, I guess I'm going to have to learn how to deal with pain. Whoa, no, that threw me into high gear. What did I do? I knew I had to talk to a hospitalist about a cancer patient's pain management. So instead of calling the hospitalist, I called the pharmacist who has been working with the oncology department and knows the pain management regimen. And I got her to tell me what to ask for and what doses and what time frame and whether it's liquid or absorbable or what. And then after I had my ducks in a row, I called the hospitalist and got everything that I needed to give this man pain management. And I did, and he was so grateful. And I loved that man. And you know what? They love you, whether they are religious or not, when you find out what their fear is and then you take care of it. Wow. Even though you can say they are not religious, when people face death, they can sometimes want to lean on your faith. They might want to know about God. They might want to know about forgiveness. And they might have guilt, and they might confess to you things that they never confess to anybody else. If they are non-religious, they may still be seeking some kind of confession for God. They might want to have a reassurance that they can be forgiven. And you can show them that you're broken and you're human. You can say kind things like, it's hard to think about death for all of us. It's such an unknown experience. They may ask you to pray for them if they find you have some kind of faith. And the Lord's Prayer is always good. It's a universal one. Maybe even non-religious people know that. And Psalm 23 or devotions or music or whatever brings comfort to that person. Ask them, be there for them. Music can be so calming. It is your privilege to be with them. You can hold a hand, you can touch them, whatever is appropriate. But the greatest thing is, we are like CSI agents, and we have to find out what's the root cause and what's going on. Another question that is mirrored with the first. Best thing to say. People are scared of dying. If they are Christian, they may confess sins to you and they want to be assured of forgiveness of God. I went to teach an 85-year-old in the ICU about heart failure, and we got to talking. And whenever I talk to the patients, I always like to ask them, what's your story? Tell me your story. If you ask that question, you're going to grab onto an awful lot of wonderful things about this person and their life. It's almost like you're a journalist, you know? And she said to me, Donna, do you think that God would forgive me for something I did when I was 17 years old? She's 85. And instead of teaching her about heart failure at that moment, it was more about, she wanted to know about God's forgiveness because, see, she was a gospel singer and she loved God and she had lived her life. But nearing death, there was a haunt. And we just had the best time because I was able to tell her, you got to stand before God in heaven and you say, oh Lord, what about my sin? And he's going to say, what sin? And I was able to tell her scriptures that I knew she knew. You know, as far as the east is from the west, well, how far is that? Never the two shall cross. That's how far your sins are removed from the eyes of God. No more. They are remembered against you. No more. And when you go to God and say, oh, what about my sin? And he'll just say, what sin? What are you talking about? Because it's already gone. And that's what she needed to hear. There is no right thing. We want to desperately say the right thing, but there's a variety of things. But the greatest thing is if you know their story and you know what's going on and you know what's really needed. Is it reconciliation because I haven't talked to my brother for 20 years? The fear of death is real. And if they trust you enough to tell you, I'm afraid to die, guess what? We can't change it all. We can't take the fear away totally, but we can respect their feelings. We can be there. We can try to provide comfort. We can try to get them to share and talk. Tell me more. Tell me why. Why are you feeling that way? What's the trigger? What happened? We don't want to say, oh, gee, I know how you feel. We can't say that. We don't have a clue. They're dying. We're not. Be ready to hear their story. Offer sensitive support. Offer kindness. Realize, guys, you are privileged. What's a good interaction you had with somebody that was dying? Oh, I've had several. I've had several. I love music. I love the old hymns. Sometimes the dying person and I sing the hymns and the family just goes, how do you guys know all those words? How do you know that? Yeah. I've had great interactions with people, letting them know that they are dying. I had a woman that palliative care had come to her and seen her 7 times, and the palliative care nurse practitioner was in a snit. She's back in. But I'd taken care of this patient more than once, and when I went in, I was able to tell her, you know, if you want to go home and see your dog, you need to grab onto hospice and get out of here because you are pushing back the inevitable, Janice. You know me. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm going to tell you the truth. Where do you really want to be? I want to be home with my dog. I want to sleep in my own bed. Well, listen to what you're saying. You don't want me to tell you. You're telling me what you want. So I can help you make this happen. You want to eat your own food. You want to sleep in your own bed. You want to be with your own dog. You want to be surrounded by your family. You want to see your grandkids. You know they can't come in here. Okay, we're going to fix this for you, darling. And we did. Why? Did I push her? No, I listened. What was she telling me? Can you listen to yourself? You know? And sometimes that's what we have to do. We have to observe. We have to help them because sometimes they can't do this by themselves. How do you handle a situation where there's been a misunderstanding about religion and beliefs to allow your patient to continue to trust you? I had this gentleman who was extremely educated, severe heart failure with frequent hospitalization, and a tremendously different religious belief from mine. I wouldn't say truly it was a misunderstanding. It was just a difference in what he thought Christianity was all about and what I believed. So he wanted to tell me because he was an academic and he was used to telling people what to do and how to do it. And here's what I think and here's what I know. And so what did I do? I allowed him space to have his different belief system. I spent several days with this man. I listened more than I shared. I was respectful. I was kind. I was compassionate. I was me. In my career, and this is very important to you, I have never found having different faith values to be a deterrent for patients not to trust me. And you can do the same. Because you see, you're not going to get a response from me that you might get a response from other people. Well, why is that? Few people in my life attempted to discount my beliefs and try to engage me in multiple arguments, but I am very at peace and content with my belief system, my faith. I understand and respect that other people have differences, but I never allowed rants or debates to trigger me, to alarm me. I often listen respectfully and in time. And that's what happened with that man, that academic man. He asked me for my views. He said, Donna, maybe I'm tainted. Maybe I've been listening to my old friends and we're not doing a very good job. And could you maybe carve out some time? I want to know what you believe. That happens. You simply share what you believe. Why? If he asks, I know what to say. I can give an account for what I believe. But ever not trust my care? No, I'm not going to have that because you see, I have a relationship with my patient as an advocate. I'm going to keep you informed of what's going on. I'm going to tell you everything you need to know. I'm going to give you as much peace as I possibly can about everything physical, everything about your medications, your mobility. I am going to help you be the best person you can be as far as your quality of life, your health, and your knowledge base. And that's trust. And because I'm a Christian, and you're a humanist, you're going to lose trust in me? Nah, doesn't happen. Don't let it happen. Good rule of thumb, prompting a patient to speak about their spirituality. If I were your patient, you would not take long when you engage a conversation with me to know that I love God very much. And you would see certain signs. And so you're like a CSI agent, you're looking around, you see this man's got his Bible. I would have a devotional, I would probably have a tablet, I would probably have something, and you would know. You would know. You would also know because your electronic medical record helps you. I have several books, and one of them is Carson and Koenig's book titled Spiritual Caregiving, Healthcare as a Ministry. And these authors did a great job. They presented 10 characteristics to those of us involved in healing ministry. And if you haven't realized it, that's exactly what we are. We are involved in healing ministry, holistic healing ministry, body, mind, spirit, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, however you want to think about it. First step that we have in our ministry or caregiving is relational. We're going to develop a relationship. We're going to enter a room. We're going to introduce ourselves. Most likely you'll give a head-to-toe assessment, and the whole time you're doing it, you're going to talk to me. You're going to tell me what my heart rate is. You're going to tell me what my blood pressure is. You're going to tell me what my O2 stat is, and you're going to explain to me what that actually means. Tell me what my temperature is. You know what? You just do all that stuff and you don't tell me anything. That's not going to build a relationship. And don't make me ask, because you can tell me. Is your pressure always 90/49? Yeah, you're 66 years old. That's kind of low in it. Yeah, that's kind of normal for me. So you're going to know a little bit about my physical life, but when you get to talking to me, you're going to know that, hey, I'm a Christian author. You're going to know that. You're going to know so-and-so you're taking care of. Oh, I'm a pastor of a church downtown. Oh, you want to know their story. You want that relationship. You want to know, what do you teach? Oh, you teach at UV. Oh, that is so good. But you also have a guide in your electronic medical record. And when you do your assessment, you enter your data at the bedside. You don't just chew all this stuff, write it down, and run out there and sit at computers. You just don't do that. You stay in the room as much as you can, sitting in the chair, looking eye to eye, being a human and respectful, and enter the data and then tell them. Review the labs and the diagnostics, inform them, educate them what's going on, what the plan is for today, and then listen to what they say when you go, oh man, your CBC has more black than red. You're in the black, which means you have more normal than you have abnormal. And the only thing I see here is your abnormal, blah, blah, blah. And what's their response to that? Oh, I am so thankful to Jesus. My whole church is praying for me. Well, what did you just find out? You just found out they're spiritual and they have a faith and they have a faith family and a support system. And then you might tell somebody what's going on. Oh, you know what? Your echo came back and it looks like you've really got some pump problem with that heart. You've got some heart failure because the normal pumping should be, and you explain it. And this is where you are, and this is probably what we're going to do. We're probably going to give you medicine, and that person may cuss you from one side to the other. That person may blame God. That person may say, why me? Oh, not another thing. You work with people and families for 12 hours or more for 3 days in a row. And believe you me, spiritual conversations are going to arise one way or another, especially if you are a person of faith. Now, if you and the patient and the family share the same faith, you're both going to know that fact just like that. You're just going to know. I'm just telling you, you're going to meet people and you're going to go, oh, you're my brother, you're my sister. Oh, how fun is this? What do you say to a patient when they're expressing feelings of missing a loved one? Well, guess what? Utilize communication skills that are in your heart. If I told you that my dog died, and oh, Donna, what kind of dog did you have? What was his name? How long did you have him? Blah, 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 blah. He was a Hungarian Vizsla, and he died a couple days after I retired, and it just broke my heart. And I listened to this song from Rory and Joey, and I'm telling you what, it just made me cry buckets, but it really helped. When I'm Gone is the name of that song. You might want to listen to it. It'll make you cry. But my husband and I just stood in the kitchen and listened to it and cried a couple times. It was really good because we got that out. So when it's a human, not a dog, do you not do the same thing? Oh man, Miss Margaret, tell me about your sweet husband. How did you meet? What was his name? What kind of work did he do? And once you give that person permission to share their story, what do? You listen, and you smile, and if a tear comes, a tear comes. You know, I often love to help my techs. I love to help give baths and provide lotion to feet and legs and put on compression socks. And if you can sit and listen for just 5 to 10 minutes, it means everything to that patient, I'm telling you. So you got to consider, have you experienced missing a loved one? If they are, and you have, and it's appropriate, they may ask you. And then if it's appropriate and you have a commonality, guess what? You can actually share your experience. And that connection and that constance and that transparency, it melds your relationship, makes you even tighter because they'll love you right back. Kubler-Ross, stages of grief. Is there a stage a person stays at longer compared to others? Well, the journey of grief doesn't come with a map. It is so individualistic that some take a detour. You might back up and revisit your past places, and just like kids, if you're the one going through it, you can go, man, am I there yet? I want this to be over. But no one can hurry up grief. It takes as long as it takes each stage, and everybody has a different watch. The journey may take you down a country road, a dead end, a turnaround. The destination is going to come in time, but you're still going to have the grief. It may be lessened. In a world where we love to schedule things, we can't schedule grief because I think it's behind the wheel, and I think sometimes it drives us. Some people will say that the second year of grief is the hardest because you have to make some decisions. Usually it can take you, if you're an adolescent, maybe 6 months to get through those stages. It may take an adult a year to get through those stages. And you're not going to make a whole lot of decisions within that year, but that second year may be a landmark where if you are now a widow, you may have to look and say, do I need to sell the house? Do I need to sell the truck? What do I need to do? And that is sometimes those decision-making pieces may be extremely hard for people. And that may be the justification of why they say the second year is a little on the more difficult side. What are additional ways to provide support for a family that lost a loved one? Well, encouragement and support for a family includes what I call creative connections. Since people often don't know what to say, or they can't find words, sometimes it's easier for them not to call, not to visit, not to reach out. One of the books that I've read tells about the Avon lady. Now, many of you are young and you may not know that there was such a thing as an Avon lady, kind of like a Mary Kay lady. She sold jewelry, she sold makeup, and she would come and visit you, and you would be her client. And so this woman had lost a baby. Well, the last time the Avon lady saw her, she was pregnant. And so when the Avon lady came to the door, she was like, oh, where's the baby? How are you? It's been a couple months and she's lost the baby, and the Avon lady didn't know. And she said, oh my goodness, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. My heart goes out to you. She drops her bag. She grabs the woman, her client, hugs her and says, I am so sorry. I know I don't know you that well, but every time I talk to God, I'm going to pray for you. And she went in and she had coffee with her, sat on the couch, and they talked and they cried together. She found out what the name of the baby was, found out all about it. Sometimes I guess we need to be like the Avon lady. Show up. Call. Don't be afraid to talk to the children. Just remember to include them, because if they've lost somebody they love, they're going to share their hearts and their feelings. One of the worst things that I can tell you about is a nursing student that I absolutely loved. Dropped out of a program and committed suicide. And of course I went to the funeral and I spoke to the grandparents, told them how much I loved her, what a wonderful student she was, and how sad I was. And so her little boy is like 5 or 6 years old, and my friend's mom shares this with me because she now is raising this little boy. And he said, Graham, I feel so sad. I feel like if I start to cry, my tears will flood the ocean. And then he cried. And this dear Graham allowed this little boy to know that his mom had died, and they talked about it, and you got to talk about it. I had a coworker back when I worked at Duke whose boyfriend died. One of the sweetest things that the neighbor did, this teenage guy neighbor who loved her and her boyfriend, without asking, mowed her yard. Didn't ask, just went over, mowed, weed eated. Acts of love. What do you do when somebody's lost loved ones? If you're going to send cards, they need to be tasteful and not guilt-producing. You can do actions like food and invites to gathering. And sometimes people become very reclusive. Have a friend at church, he lost his wife. My husband and his friend reached out and reached out and reached out. And they used to go to breakfast together. He just wouldn't do it, wouldn't do it, wouldn't do it. And my husband's got another man who's one of his best friends who was in his wedding, and the same kind of thing. He lost his wife. He's just become a recluse, and you just can't change that, but you can continue to call, continue to offer. Share memories with the family. Don't be afraid to mention the dead person's name and how much they meant to you. And in the event the one who died was quite a character, don't be afraid to share funny stories. Laughter can be such a great emotional release, especially if they were kind of snarky. And you can sense when laughter is an appropriate thing. My neighbor lost her husband, and she told me that the greatest people when her husband died. The people that gave her comfort just came and sat beside her. They gave her permission to be quiet and to talk when she felt like it. And silence didn't bother them at all. They were there. Pat her leg, hold her hand, be kind. There are wonderful things that you can do, and I can tell you it's after the fact. So my girlfriend's husband died, had a massive heart attack and died. Loved that man. I just loved her husband. Everybody did. I called her months later, and it's so amazing. I called her. I said, "Hey, Nance, it's Donna. I need to know. How are you? What's going on? And how are you doing?" She said, "Oh, Donna, it's so cool that you called right now because I feel closer to Bob today than I have in months." I'm like, "Okay, what are you doing?" She said, "I'm sitting in my rocker and I've got my hands in Bob's gloves and I'm just relishing. And I'm so glad you called so I could share this moment with somebody. So glad you called." Simple, simple. There have been people who sent flowers on the birthday, or I guess you'd call it the death day, but they didn't. They sent flowers on the first birthday anniversary in heaven. Wow. And that touched a dear one. I love sharing stories with you, so it gives you ideas. Okay, how do you help a person that's experiencing physical signs of grief? Well, the first thing you need to know is there's such a thing as a broken heart syndrome or cardiomyopathy. It's called Takotsubo. So if you have somebody that's really having physical symptoms, the first thing you want to do is do the cardiac assessment because there's a good possibility they're having extensive chest pain. And these physical grief, signs of grief, you can't overlook them. So they say it's probably a surge of stress hormones that create that temporary heart muscle damage from an intense emotional event. They'll usually do a cardiac cath to find out if your arteries that feed the heart pump are blocked or if you have adequate blood flow. And usually you do have adequate blood flow. It's not coronary artery disease. And you may have a ballooning or a change in the shape of the heart. And your enzymes can rise, and it's temporary, and it's going to return to full function and normality over time. Now, some people can actually die from massive heart issue, from stress, but usually it is a rare thing. If you get on the American Association of Heart Failure Nurse patient tip sheets, you'll see a great handout on Takotsubo, broken heart syndrome. And here are some of the signs and symptoms physically. You can have angina, shortness of breath, weak left ventricle. You can have arrhythmias and low blood pressure, palpitations, syncope, or faintness. Other things that can happen when you have grief. You're not able to sleep. Your pressure is high. You're constantly in a state of fatigue. You have lowered immunity and you have a terrible poor appetite and digestive issues. Some people can have tachycardia where your heart rate is just going off the charts, weight changes, and headaches. And yes, grief, physical signs and symptoms need to be investigated to make sure that we don't overlook anything. How does a nurse cope with feelings of death? And does it get overwhelming? And what type of coping mechanisms do you use? Well, caregiver coping strategies are very valuable. And the first suggestion I can provide for you, develop your own loss timeline. Who or what has died in your life, including your dreams? your family members, your dog, your job opportunities, they all fall into a category of loss. And loss is an unexpected event that changes your life and you can't go back. And grief is the emotional response to that situation or event. So you can plot your own line and determine, what did people do that helped you? What did people do or say that hurt you? What did someone say that gave you comfort? What do you believe? What is your faith system? Do you believe something about heaven or hell or God? And what do you believe happens to you when you die? Imagine you receive the diagnosis of terminal illness. What are you going to think? What are you going to do differently? If you have family members who have experienced loss, ask them questions. Journal their answers and realize you are on your way to be knowledgeable about loss and grief and the spiritual care process. The more you know from real life experience, the greater it is. I'm one of those. I love life experience, and I love the lessons we can learn from each other. So, this second session focused on compassionate communication, timing, physical symptoms, and coping mechanisms for nursing. It's been a privilege. I'll get going on the other sessions for you. I just can't thank you enough for submitting questions, because you have a healing ministry, compassionate spirit that you all want to know. And I hope that I'm able to help you in any way I can. And if you need to reach out to me about anything, you know you can. walkthehalls.com. There's an info place that you can send me an email if you need me. God bless you and thank you. Have a great educational experience. I'll tell you, I've never regretted being a nurse. It's a wonderful profession, a great career, and I'm just so glad that you want to know and you want to learn. Very proud of you all. Thank you so much.